Hi, and welcome to Tally Talk. I'm Liv.
And I'm Ben.
And on this episode, you'll hear our carefully considered and not at all random thoughts on a show we like. There will be spoilers.
We're giving ourselves an age rating of 15 and above, but you're welcome to make up your own mind. Listener discretion is advised.
If you like what you hear, please rate, review and subscribe. It really means a lot to us.
It certainly does. And you can contact us on our socials. We're TellyTalkPod on both Blue Sky and Facebook. And you can email us at our email address of tellytalkpod@outlook.com. We would really love to hear from you.
Absolutely. So, this episode, we are looking at Married at First Sight Australia, and this is the first commitment ceremony.
Which is always really interesting.
Yes, we find a lot more out about what's going on.
Yeah, we really do. And the dinner parties are high on conflict drama.
Yes.
Whereas the commitment ceremonies, you really get a bit more of a dig deep.
You kind of get into the weeds of it, and people are held to account, and people are allowed to explain and given that time to explain themselves or how they're feeling and so on.
Yeah, it's sort of like the dinner party ruffles up all the dust and then you get a little bit of settling and a little bit of closure for some couples.
That's a really, really lovely way of putting it, actually. That's exactly what happens.
Oh, thanks. So, as we've talked about before, what we're doing this season with Married at First Sight Australia is we're just dipping in at the points that the experts typically dip in, which is at the dinner parties and the commitment ceremonies.
Just a reminder, we are the armchair experts, Liv and Ben, and our real experts are John, Mel and Alessandra. They are all officially relationship experts, and Alessandra is also a sexologist.
A title which I am never going to not think is amazing.
Absolutely. Yes. What a job title.
As I said, she will have some business cards. So what we're going to do for this episode is we're going to go through the couples in the order in which they sit on the couches in front of the experts.
Yes, and just a note, we have lost Lauren and Elliot already. We saw Lauren in the dinner party episode, and that was her last appearance. She's gone now.
Yeah, whereas in the dinner party episode, Elliot was only there in spirit, a grumpy, misogynistic spirit.
I don't know if he wanted to be there in spirit, but he was certainly talked about with spirit.
Oh, yes, he was. So, the beginning part of the episode, we see the couples all getting ready for the commitment ceremony. So, some of the couples you learn a bit more than others, but we're mostly going to focus on their sessions with the experts, and we might touch upon a little bit from the beginning of the episode where relevant.
Yeah, because that beginning of the episode also includes some flashbacks to some of the challenges that they've done as couples throughout the week. We're also not really going to be focusing on those because the experts won't have seen those either. We are really trying to put ourselves in the position of only seeing what the actual experts see, and we will talk about that.
Yeah. For setting the scene, you start off with all the brides walking in single file and sitting down.
I think we can probably call them wives at this point.
Wives, sorry, yes. The wives parade in, and then, pointlessly, the husbands all parade in and sit next to their wives.
Yes.
And then the experts kick off the proceedings.
Yeah, in this episode, John is the one that welcomes everyone. He starts to introduce what the session's going to be about. And then
Stuff starts to happen and he's distracted. It's the first time, as far as we're aware, that it's ever happened where a participant is late. So Tim saunters in, well, he shuffles in slightly embarrassedly, I feel like.
Yeah, he is bright red. Apart from around his eyes, where it looks like he's been wearing sunglasses, the rest of his face is bright red. It looks like he's been burnt.
I'd previously described him as an angry thumb of a man, a bruised thumb of a man, and he looks even more so, like he's had an extra hammer smack.
Yeah. So I think he's highly embarrassed, and I think he's got a bit of shame, and I don't know, but he's brave in that he attends.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I felt like it was obvious that the experts had no idea this was about to happen because they looked shocked.
Yes, I mean, you referred to him as late, but as he came in, yeah, we weren't expecting him. We just thought he wasn't coming. So They started without him.
Which, to my mind, felt a bit naughty, because this is obviously the producers setting it up. Like, he must have been there early and everything. They've made this a dramatic entrance to really illustrate. I feel like that's production looking at sort of what would go well on telly, as opposed to what might have been good for Katie.
Yes, they've gone for the drama rather than protecting feelings.
It does give me higher opinion of the integrity of the experts, because they're either amazing actors or they had no idea.
Yes. Yeah, so there's a bit of pause while Tim walks in, and John addresses him and then quickly moves on. And now let's move to our first couple that sits on the couch, Karina and Paul.
Yes, our first couple, and usually the first couple are doing fine. They're kind of the palate cleanser to start with, aren't they?
Yes, and this season they are also one of the couples that already knew each other beforehand. In fact, I think the first two that we speak to have seen each other before.
Yes, they have. They were the ones that had had a single date back in the day.
That's right.
And they're fine. They say they're close, positive, happy, content. There's not a lot to say.
Well, I actually have quite a lot to say.
I take it back.
One of the first things that Karina says is that she is feeling safe and secure. And I thought that was a very interesting way of wording a new relationship.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, the only reason you're going to refer to feeling safe and secure is if you haven't had those feelings previously, either in your childhood, your home life, previous relationships, or something else has happened that has sort of tarnished that sense of security that you would otherwise have.
Well, now that you put it that way, that does make an awful lot of sense.
Yeah, and we get some nice reflections from Alessandra at this point that encourage Karina to keep talking.
How so?
Well, she reflects back the language that Karina herself uses, which enables Karina to feel heard and safe and secure, and allows her to continue her thoughts.
Ah, okay, so she's just very skillfully teasing out more reflection from her.
Yeah, and you can really see Alessandra's therapeutic background here. You can see she's well versed in this. A bit later on the couch, Alessandra asks Karina about their sexual intimacy, and Karina sort of shifts around and comes across as very uncomfortable. I then also felt uncomfortable, and I wondered why that was. That was some level of transference coming through, and I wondered if she felt uncomfortable joking about sexual intimacy. I got the impression that this is something that she takes very seriously, and she doesn't want to talk about it, A, in public, and B, in such a light-hearted tone.
Okay, that's interesting, because my take on it was that perhaps she had some concerns around how soon he wanted to have intimacy versus how soon she was willing to sort of, for want of a better phrase, give it up. Because she stresses that she made him wait. And I don't know if that felt a bit like she was taking a bit more control and sort of going, no, I want to wait, I don't want to rush into this. And I wondered if that was because maybe in the past she's felt like she's progressed too quickly, and that's been a negative for her?
That's possible. I didn't get that vibe as much because, I mean, she talks that they have been intimate and that she did make him wait according to her values. And it's Alessandra that says, well, you didn't really.
Yeah, she was a little bit.
Yeah, and she sort of invalidates Karina at this point, because Karina's opinion is that she did make him wait and that it felt comfortable for both of them. And as I say, this was the point when, because Alessandra says a little bit that it becomes very jokey, and that is when we see Karina's body language shift and she moves to being uncomfortable.
That's really interesting, and so it's sort of a bit of a mixed performance there from our experts. She's showing good therapeutic awareness in drawing out that sort of expression from her, but then later on in the same phase, she's then sort of almost suppressing and invalidating her.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yes, and I would say that humour within therapy is only appropriate when there's a really strong therapeutic alliance. And of course, we're not in a counselling session here. and things can be misjudged by therapists. I'm just pointing out that, in my opinion, Karina takes sexual intimacy very seriously and felt uncomfortable joking about it.
And I think what we're probably also seeing there is that dichotomy of role that the experts are playing, because they're both playing experts in relationships, but they're also entertainers on a television show, and that's a very conflicting role.
That is such a good point, yeah. Their session on the couch ends very quickly after that, and they both say stay, so they will live to see another week.
And so we're going to move on from that couple, who I initially said seemed fine, and it turned out maybe there was more concerns, to a couple that on our previous episode on MAFS Australia, you expressed some concern.
Yes.
So how do you think this couch session went?
I think it mirrored what I saw at the dinner party, where Rhi is using her body language to show that she's unhappy, anxious maybe, certainly not in a comfortable place, but she's saying that she is, and she's saying that everything's fine.
Yeah, after our discussion about the dinner party and you expressing those, I was sort of mindful of that when we were watching, and I did notice that more, like there was very much a case of the words and the body telling different stories, or at least that was my perception as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how they were sat together, Rhi and Jeff, he's got his arm around her, they're sitting very close, and she is closed. Her back is not away from him, but it's sort of turned, and her arms are in front of her. She is giving him nothing back.
Yeah, that's true, and I think that's also reflected on the discussion around intimacy with them, because she says that they haven't slept together, and that it's very clear that that's her choice, because she's, as she says, worried it will fizzle out like it has before.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether the implication there is that it's happened before in other relationships, or whether it happened in the month that they were together previously, because this is our other couple who have been together, but they spent a month going out.
Yeah.
And she reveals that they had slept together previously. She'd slept over a few nights and things. So I don't know whether she means directly with him. And obviously, depending on the context, it might change some of the implications for what she's saying.
Yes, you're right. It might. What I did notice, though, on the positive side for them, is that as they continue to talk to the experts on the couch, she does relax. Rhi relaxes into it, and her and Jeff are seemingly quite comfortable together. And this seems to happen when they're talking about the flirting and the kissing. So she's drawn that boundary of no sexual intimacy, and then it's almost like she can relax because it's out there and there's no pressure. Because actually, maybe these two couples, Karina and Paul and Rhi and Jeff, feel like there is more pressure on them because of a pre-existing relationship.
Yeah, that's a good point. There might well be. Because he talked about how the wheels have started to turn in the last week when talking about their relationship, and they reveal that they have finally shared a kiss for the first time since they were together the previous time, and that is put across as quite a big milestone for them.
And actually at that point, the rest of the couple sort of whoop and cheer. And I think maybe that does highlight the level of pressure that's on all of the couples.
That is true. It's easy to forget that they're not just being judged by the experts and by us, but also their fellow contestants.
Yeah.
Or participants.
Yeah. So moving on, unless you've got anything else to say.
Did we say they both stay?
No.
They both stay.
They both stay. So moving on to Ash and Jake.
This is our first very troubled couple.
Yeah, so they started off with a good connection and they tell us about that. And then we move very quickly, I think, to Ash taking responsibility for the strain in their relationship, because she spoke about some of the troubles that they were having with other people, and it was more the trouble she was having with him. And she apologises to him for venting to other people.
Yeah, I was puzzled about this because we saw a bit of it in the preamble part of the show, and even there she was sitting him down and going, I wanted you to know that I went and talked to my friend, and I know that was bad, and I know it was a betrayal of our trust and all that. And I'm like, is this coming from her? Has she got like this real strong sense of that being a bad thing? Or is she already aware that he's going to have a problem with this?
And this might be a case of being hyper aware of there being an audience, a wider audience, and then being public on the television. Because she's taking responsibility, she's getting in front of something that she could potentially feel that she'll be accused of on the couch, as opposed to maybe necessarily feeling that way.
Yeah, that's a really good point, to be fair. I hadn't considered it from that perspective, because she does, when she starts explaining what some of the friction is, beyond her sharing with someone else, she talks about nothing that Jake says is done with malice. She's really keen to point that out, and my first thought was, yeah, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Like, he still said it. I feel like this whole thing of, oh, you know, he meant well, or he didn't mean to cause offence, or he doesn't think before he says anything, they're all sort of lazy excuses for going, please don't tell me off for the things I said because I'm being ignorant.
And actually, this is a good time to jump in with what he did say. It was in their couples rating challenge where the men are asked to rate the women in order of looks and vice versa. And when Jake was doing it, he made some very nasty comments about the other women, including sexist and racist comments.
Yeah, it went far beyond from what we've seen, what you would expect for like the general discussion points. He got quite judgy and quite definitive in statements.
Yes, and you could see this as potentially the producers putting pressure on him to not just rank but verbalise why, and he does say he was trying not to cause any offence, and I wonder if in his mind that was limited to physical appearance, so don't comment on eye colour, hair colour, attractiveness necessarily, and he tried to swivel and talk about other stuff, and in so doing made things so much worse.
Yeah, he really did not do himself any favours, because it felt like he was trying to weasel out of what he'd said. And I do think, if I'm completely honest, I think he was very clumsily trying to say, I didn't mean any of that, I was just playing up to the camera. But what he comes across as saying was, I actually like all of you, it just came out a bit wrong.
I was joking.
Oh yeah.
Which is one of the worst things to say, because what he's trying hard not to do is take accountability, and ultimately the experts do manage to get him to accept his behaviour and what he did was wrong, and he does take accountability, but there's a lot of squirming in there.
I don't think we ever heard him say that he was sorry.
No, that's a good point.
Although, of course, he might have, and they edited it out.
Yeah, that is something you've always got to be aware of, isn't it, when you're watching reality telly?
But the interesting thing about this is that when we get into whether they're staying or leaving, it seems like Jake has come to this commitment ceremony feeling like the aggrieved party. Because when they do their stay or leave, Ash has put stay, and he immediately gets uncomfortable.
Yes, and I think that's largely because he wasn't expecting her to stay. I think he was expecting her to put leave because of his horrific behaviour, and I don't think he wanted to be embarrassed being the person that said stay when she'd said leave. And so when he found out that she'd actually put stay, he became uncomfortable and moved into defending why he wrote that, which was to blame her for talking to her friends about him.
Yeah, and unfortunately for him, it really came across as super tone deaf.
Absolutely, yeah.
I was just like, is he trying to be hated? Because it's like he's really stepping into that villain role right there.
Yeah. One thing I did wonder about him, and this will be interesting to track as we move forward, I was wondering if he is a people pleaser. And was he trying to please Ash by putting her first and then trying to put the other women down, and at the same time please the producers by giving them content?
I mean, that's entirely possible, because that would tally in, because she says, but when I was telling you that I'd shared that information with Sierra, you said, oh no, it's okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but now I've had time to think about it and I'm actually quite hurt.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. But in the context of him being a people pleaser in the moment, that probably does make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think so. And it will just be something interesting to keep a track of as we go through.
Yeah, for sure. So the interesting thing about these two is one said stay and one said leave. So by the rules of the show, that means that they stay for another week, and then at the next commitment ceremony, if either of them says leave, they will actually leave.
Yeah, yeah.
The only way they outright leave is if you get 2 leaves.
Yes, yeah.
It's a 2 leave means walk out the door scenario.
Thanks for the clarification.
You're welcome. I bring value. So next up, we're going to talk about Jamie and Dave.
So what I like about Jamie and Dave is that they really seem to appreciate each other, and they seem to be putting each other first.
Yes, and I thought that was really interesting because I know at the dinner party you particularly had some concerns that Dave didn't seem to have her back.
Yeah, I did.
But the first thing that she says is, he's had my back from the off.
Yeah, and that's really nice to hear. Obviously, that was my opinion, that he wasn't there for her in the way that she needed, and it seems like he actually was.
It might well support our continued questions at times of going, actually, we only see an edit.
Yeah.
So we see a story that's presented to us by the producers, so we do have to bear that in mind.
Yeah, and on the couch, we see some lovely body language from them. They're really connected. Their bodies are almost overlapping. They are so close. And she says that he has her back. And then what's quite nice is she says, I used to be tough. And she refers to herself now as being all soppy.
Yeah, that's true, she does. And the interesting thing is, I'd had that as a sort of slightly concerning thing to me, possibly. It was just a sort of idle thought, because is there a sort of almost unhealthy focus on being tough and being a B word, as she puts it?
Well, I mentioned in the last episode again that some of her forceful nature in protecting Katie may well have come from some historical stuff for herself. And I think this tough exterior that she presents is perhaps an indication that there is more there.
Yeah, that's true. What I thought was really good as well on the other side of that partnership is that Dave expressed things like, she makes me feel seen.
Yeah.
Which isn't something that we hear a lot from the men on this show, generally. It's quite vulnerable and quite in touch with themselves and their own needs in a positive emotional sense.
Yes, and I can't remember who says it. It might have been Jamie, but she says, we're both ourselves. And that's a really interesting statement because obviously we have different aspects of ourselves, but it feels like what she's saying is that they both feel comfortable with each other and that they are a version of themselves that they like when they're together.
Yeah, and I think that's really positive. They seem so far, from what I've seen, the most, what seems like naturally aligned couple.
Yes.
Very at ease.
It seems like they've put in a lot of work to appreciate each other and value each other at this early stage.
That's right, and you'll be shocked to learn that we get both of them saying stay.
Hooray!
Who's up next?
We have Sierra and Billy. So we've already seen Billy standing up for Sierra when we were talking about the Jake stuff.
So I thought it was really interesting with this couple because it largely focused around just saying it went really well to start with and the honeymoon was quite good, which is a bit of a step down. But then she admits to having some insecurities come to the surface that she didn't know were there. But she then sort of repositions those quite quickly as saying it's because Billy is better than past partners, that he's a good guy and also hot. And most of the men that she's been with before suck, to quote her.
Yeah, and one thing that I noticed about Sierra is that when she thinks no one's looking, she appears really, really sad. And so it makes me wonder how much of a front she's putting on, either with Billy or just in front of the experts or to the camera. I'm not sure. But when she feels like she's got a private moment, her face just drops, and it is a bit heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because we don't actually get a huge amount of insight into them as a couple. We talk about her insecurities and that she kind of has had a bad past, and that's kind of it. We don't learn much about him, we don't learn much about their relationship, and what we have seen, it seems like he basically smiles at her a lot.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, one to watch. I don't think we've scratched the surface there very much.
Well put.
They both stay. we haven't really learned anything yet.
Jackie and Ryan. You have quite a lot to say about this couple, I imagine.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan, and I certainly wasn't very optimistic about them in the dinner party, and I am neither more of a fan nor more optimistic about them at this point, although the experts themselves fundamentally seem determined that they'll be great.
Yeah, I know. So, one of the things that I picked up on was that they say that they're just being honest with each other, and actually what they're doing is being really mean to each other. They're not treating each other with kindness and respect. And it almost feels like they're going out of their way to hurt the other person.
Yeah, they were one step away from saying, I'm not nasty, I just tell it like it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like.
I got a lot of passive aggression from this couple. And what's quite interesting is Ryan, to start with. He says that their relationship so far has been a mixed bag, which is always a great review. But he leads off by pulling an Elliot and basically telling the experts that they've completely ignored him and Jackie and given them someone that doesn't match anything they asked for.
Yeah, he says that they both had the perfect vision, and I think that in itself is quite telling. They had perfect visions of the partner that would be best for them.
But the interesting thing is, as the experts point out, they both list relatively superficial things. Like he says, I wanted someone that would cook with me, and she hates cooking. And she says, he doesn't listen to me. When I ask him to do things, I just want him to do them. Yeah. And then lists off a list of relatively minor things that made a lot of the other couples laugh in how petty they felt.
Yeah, and they both try and position themselves as victims of the other person, when really, as you said, they are being very superficial.
I think we've got two people here that don't necessarily have a fully mature perspective on a relationship, because I know we don't talk about the pre-couch stuff much here, but I think there's some really telling stuff from this couple. So she goes into it saying, Ryan deserves a grilling. She goes in expecting the experts to really focus on him. And when talking about their constant bickering, she says the classic line, when people are arguing, they care about each other. What do you think about that, Liv?
I don't think that's true.
No, I don't either. That seems flawed.
Yes. Also, at one point, Jackie is laughing when the experts are sort of pressing them for more information. And one of the experts, I can't remember which one, asks her, why are you laughing? And she said, oh, I dissociate.
What's also interesting, not only does she say she's dissociating, she actually says, I've had to dissociate because of some of the things he's said.
Yeah.
She's even positioned that he's forced me to do this.
And I do think that, as you said, understanding some of their historical relationships would be very interesting.
Yeah, from all of their discussion and interaction, neither of these two is my cup of tea, to put it in a terribly British fashion. Like, he focuses on saying, like, we're both super intelligent and we love cryptocurrency and we can have a really good conversation, and that they talk about bonding over. And that's what John and the other experts point to as deep and meaningful connection, and that they need to foster that.
Yeah, well, that's sort of shared recreational hobbies, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm clouded with these two because I just have a gut dislike of both of them. They both stay. I think we're going to have bigger blowouts with these two further along.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the producers do as well, because it was this couple that the little poll was about at the bottom of the episode.
That's right. They did a poll to see whether Ryan should stay with Jackie, and 81% of viewers said, no. Roll on, Morena and Tony. I'm sure this will be sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah. I feel a bit bored with this couple already.
Which is a shame, because she was stellar right at the death of the dinner party with some one-liners.
Yes, and I feel like she may have peaked.
Yeah, she's got some strong opinions.
Yeah, and for me, they were very uncomfortable to hear, because she believes herself and her own views to be absolutely correct, and she believes that Tony is wrong.
Just in general, that is his defining trait. He is wrong and she is right.
Yeah, she says that she is determined that she's going to love someone, and that's going to happen no matter what. And Tony, so far, is keeping things light-hearted, light and breezy. He doesn't want to get into the depths of anything, and she seems to be trying to force that.
I'm not entirely convinced that Morena has ever actually smiled.
I can neither confirm nor deny that. I have no idea.
She's very, very intense. What I thought was really interesting in the subject of previous couples who have had differing body language and words, and where it's usually an individual, they sat down and said, yeah, everything's sort of fine, and they're sat as far away as humanly possible on that couch without actually sitting on the arms of the couch.
And in terms of body language as well, he is sort of leaning back, his body language is very open, and across the couch, as you say, right across the couch, her body language is very closed.
Yeah, she's sat on the edge of the sofa, knees together, leant over, bent forwards.
Yeah.
And they couldn't be more contrasting. And it really actually reflects kind of how they describe each other or themselves. So Tony talks about just wanting to keep things light and fresh and easy. And Marina is determined to drag him, kicking and screaming, immediately into deeper, meaningful conversations, whether it's natural or not.
Yeah, and for me, this couple just aren't connecting. And I don't think they're going to be successful. I don't see a way forward for them. Alessandra calls for them to have balance within their communication and that will solve the beginning of their problems. I'm not convinced.
Well, also, I'm not convinced at all that Marina is taking that on board whatsoever. She's so determined that she needs love right now that she wants to force it through as quickly as possible. And I noticed that after they sort of say, oh, you need to have balanced communication, and Tony says, yeah, I'd like that. They go and sit down with the group, and Marina has such an angry face on. She is livid because that didn't go the way she wanted.
Yes, and I think sometimes that can be an issue with the show because this couple, these two individual people, are married, and ordinarily a marriage is a very special display of emotion and affection.
Yeah, that's true, and so they've skipped all of that and they're just two strangers trying to figure out conversation from two incredibly different perspectives.
Yes, and I think Moreno's gone straight into, but we're married, therefore there must be love. She hasn't quite disconnected those two things for the purposes of this process.
There also appears to be quite a significant lack of empathy from her in this situation. Like, there's no understanding that his perspective could be valid, or even that perspective could exist, really. She came across to me as quite patronising, saying things like, come on, Tony, I'm right here. Don't you think that if you maybe just tried to have a conversation with me, you could be open to love?
Yeah. I think she's got a lot of issues to work out, and I don't think that doing that in a public forum on telly involving other people is the right way. I think this needs to be therapized. Yeah,
because Tony even said part of the reason why he doesn't talk is she answers for him, and she cuts him off at least a couple of times in this conversation.
Yeah. Yes, one of the first things is that she says he doesn't talk, so he goes to talk and she immediately cuts him off.
Sort of stunning lack of self-awareness.
In a shocking turn of events, they both say stay. So, Adrian and Athena.
These two were very interesting, I thought. I'd like to start from the off by saying, Liv, you were right and I was wrong. When we first came across this couple at the dinner party, we got a little flashback to them talking in their honeymoon, and I thought they both had children, and he was saying that he couldn't love her children as much as his children. He doesn't have children, as you said. He was talking about the idea of not being able to love her children as much as his own biological children. He makes that very clear.
Yes, and what I thought was interesting was when the experts question him on those beliefs, he says, as part of a big rambling justification, it's a big responsibility. And I just grabbed hold of that and I thought, that is it. Like, he listed 3 or 4 reasons. But I think the crux of it is that children are a big responsibility, and he's fearful about that. He's fearful about the role he could play as a step-parent that may not last, because this is a new relationship, and he doesn't want to involve children when it might not last.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think what this is also quite interesting is it really illustrates that sometimes when you're processing these things out loud, or you're going all in on explaining all of these different things around it, you can be quite unaware of how damaging some of those statements can be to the other party in the conversation, because we see her reaction to the things he says, like, him valuing growing up in a family where all the kids were from the same parents. And that seems to really hit her very hard.
Yeah, it does. And rightly so. Rightly so. It is upsetting. And I was thinking that these values, as he calls them, I don't think they're necessarily his. I think they are values that have been placed on him by his family and by the society that he grew up in.
Yeah, that's true. We do carry a lot of the burdens of what we're taught as we go along, and those do impact our relationships.
Yeah, and I think the very fact that he has spent some time with this and he's processed, and he had some really thoughtful and, I would say, genuine thoughts and feelings on reflection about actually it being a good thing. I think that just shows that these are not innate feelings to him. These concerns that he had, I think, came from other people.
And so you're pretty confident that his assertions of actually if he falls in love with her, those things will be pretty minimal, is true and authentic, do you? Because I had a slight niggle of worry that it all felt a bit cinematic and a little bit convenient for the razzmatazz of the show, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I do see what you mean, but I do get the vibe that he is genuine and congruent.
I guess we'll find out in our snapshots going forward, but
Yeah,
I hope that you're right. There's just a little part of me that worries that it's a bit convenient.
okay. Well, I mean, that's fair at this stage, and as you say, we'll see how it goes.
Who's going to win, the optimist or the cynic? They both stay, so ultimately we'll probably get a chance to see who's right and who's wrong.
On to the car crash.
It's all Tim and Katie from here on out, people. Do you want to start off with Tim and Katie, or do you want me to?
I want you to.
Okay, so we learn first off that despite being very insistent that he's tried really hard and tried the most out of both he and Katie, Tim has barely showed up to work on the show at any point. He hasn't been present at all since the dinner party, so the last time we saw him is the last time that Katie saw him. And I don't know how he would expect their relationship to grow in any way, shape or form if he's not actually there. As far as I can tell, he's shown up for maybe 3 days total out of the 9 that they've been here so far, which is pretty poor.
Well, Katie and Tim move to the couch, and the experts want to hear from Katie. They're not really interested in what Tim has to say right now. They know that she needs to voice what's happened, and that she needs some closure on what's gone on between them, and they give her the floor.
And they've obviously seen the way that the conversation goes from the dinner party, and they need to give structure and to go, no, you have the time to talk, this is your safe time to talk.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So Katie is somewhat tearful when she's describing to the experts what's gone on. And I found it very disrespectful that Tim was pulling faces throughout what she was describing.
Everything she said, he was pulling a face and be like, yeah, what? And yet they were stuff that we know that he said, that he's admitted he said.
Yeah.
It's maddening. I don't know why he's showed up.
Yeah.
I don't get it, because he's obviously not in full-on damage limitation mode.
No.
Because he's just acting like a petulant child. I don't understand.
As with others that we've seen, he's very much acting the victim.
Yeah, so Katie starts off by explaining she feels that as soon as Tim saw her, he gave up because he didn't get what he ordered. She didn't have the right hair colour, she was of the wrong stature, to put it euphemistically, and she wasn't quiet. And this seems to be a thing with some of the men on the show this season.
I don't know what's going on.
It was the second time that I'm going, that is very Elliot-esque. And that is not a good thing.
So yeah, that is 3 husbands referring to the women as being something that they've ordered.
Yeah, and that's 3 out of 10. That's nearly a third.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's not good.
I think, I don't know where this comes from. It feels like it speaks to something deeper, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I wonder if it's a societal thing. We're very used to, these days, dating apps and being able to refine the type of person that you're looking for, coupled with the prevalence of porn and people accessing that, and again, being able to really refine what they find attractive and watching that. And I wonder if those 2 things combined are creating this sense of entitlement in some of the men.
That's true, because online dating is sort of the premier way of meeting people in this day and age, and it is all focused on, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
Here are a bunch of people, tell us if they meet your requirements.
And again, coming back to it being a show, a reality show, there was probably a similar form to fill in for the application of Married at First Sight.
That's a really good point. I think that it seems pretty clear that Tim has done exactly what Katie is accusing him of. They eventually put a pause on Katie and give Tim his time to shine. And he immediately does what he did at the dinner party and goes on the attack.
Yeah, this does not go well.
For anyone. He frames it as, I just wanted someone who was here for me. I've tried, she hasn't tried. You know, the same thing that he pulled on her at the dinner party.
And at one point, he leans back on the sofa with his head up, very arrogant, almost like a power pose, and he says, "That's not a partner I want."
It's almost completely unsettling, because you're like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, where is this position come from? And it all ties in with that. I don't understand why he's here, and neither do the experts, and we'll get onto that. But he's very unrepentant. And I think this is what forces the experts, and specifically John, to stop him in his tracks and give him some home truths.
Yeah.
And it was quite validating for me, and I assume for you as well, Liv.
Yeah.
Because I talked tentatively about gaslighting in the dinner party episode, because I wasn't convinced that he was doing it to make her feel crazy. But John seems fully convinced. He describes it as gaslighting 101.
Yeah. And he details why. And as he's going through this, Tim becomes very uncomfortable. He is physically shifting his whole body, he's adjusting his shirt, and he does that a number of times. And it's almost like he is feeling exposed by John's words.
Yeah, he was fidgeting so much. I thought he was getting up to scuttle off again like he did at the dinner party. He was like fully getting out of his chair. It was very over-the-top physical gestures.
Yeah.
John talks about his deflecting and blaming of Katie. He even goes so far as to say it broke his heart to see Katie blaming herself for the breakdown of their relationship.
Yeah.
Because Tim does come with the quotes.
He said, "I wanted someone to get to know me, and that didn't happen."
And interestingly, when he was challenged at the dinner party about, did you contact her?
Yeah.
He said, I don't have her number.
Yeah.
And they ask him the same thing here. And he doesn't say, I didn't have her number. He just said, I just didn't. I don't know. It's just, it still baffles me. I don't understand what he thought he'd get out of this. The only thing that I can think of is he came back for this episode to try and control the narrative.
Yeah.
I think he thought he could do the same thing to everyone that he did to Katie at the dinner party. And just get ahead of it and go, I'll give my perspective and everyone will be fine.
Yeah. Because Katie shuts him down quite early on, because he does try to take over the narrative when she's talking, and she shuts him down. And I noticed that from that point, Tim doesn't listen. He's not listening to her, he's not listening to John, and he is literally just waiting for his turn to talk. And so I wonder if it was just so that he could get his full story, something that he feels justified in believing.
Yeah, because by the end of it, he is just sort of petulant, really. Like, oh, I feel that's a lot on me, but nothing coming back. And he just won't concede anything.
Yeah, and it's at that point that John gives up on him and says, right, well, let's go to your decisions then.
Yeah, and in an unprecedented move, we'd already seen in the build-up of the episode that Katie had written leave. They left no uncertainty. I was convinced that as soon as I saw Tim arrive, I said to you, he's going to put stay. He's going to be that guy and try and be like, well, I'm trying. But he didn't. He put leave too, thank goodness.
Yes, and so that's going to be the last that we see of Katie and Tim. And again, the group rally round her after. Once the couch episode is all done, you can see them all going to her and comforting her and bigging her up again.
Yeah, and so that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
That was a really fascinating episode, and I thought we got a lot of really varied insights into a lot of different couples who seem to be in a lot of different stages, and there's definitely a couple of couples there that are putting on a front.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that they know it, but we will see as the weeks progress.
So I know we covered this at the dinner party, but I've got a few questions for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So first off, this one we did sort of cover at the dinner party, but I want to see if anything's changed. Do you think there's a specific couple that you would predict would be the big blowout for the dinner party and commitment ceremony next time?
Oh, next time specifically?
Next time!
Yeah, I mean, next time it's got to be Jackie and Ryan.
I agree. My outsider is Morena and Tony.
Yeah, same.
I could see that exploding spectacularly, because I think that she is going to lose her patience.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think they could implode.
Ooh, now we're getting all technical. So you think they'll just quietly implode and we'll never see them again?
Yeah, I think that's possible.
We may never see them again after this, because by the time we get to the dinner party, they might just be gone.
Well, I suppose maybe it wouldn't happen that quickly.
Okay. And if you had to pick one of the couples to go for a quiet afternoon drink at the pub with, who would you pick?
A quiet drink? Does it specifically have to be quiet?
Okay, a drink at the pub.
A drink at the pub, I'm definitely going with Jamie and Dave.
Are you really?
Yeah.
There's a morbid part of me that wants to say Jackie and Ryan.
I think that would be awkward as hell.
It would. I don't do confrontation, so I don't know what I'm doing to myself. I had this slight notion of going through each of the couples and saying what we hope for them, but I think it was far too early for that, and I think we've dealt with it as we've gone.
Yeah.
So, how did you feel about the overall episode? Do you want to go into ratings?
Yeah, we can do ratings. I have given it a 9 out of 10. I thought there was a lot of really good content in there. I thought there's a lot of food for thought. I thought the experts stepped up and challenged where needed. And it was a thoroughly enjoyable episode to watch.
Nice. I'm going to put it at a 6 Heartbroken Johns out of 7.
Heartbroken Johns?
Yeah, because John was heartbroken over Tim making Katie think that she was responsible for the breakdown of their relationships. So just imagine John with shocked Pikachu face. 6 out of 7 of those.
Wow.
Did that just break your heart a little?
No, I was looking at you with a like, what kind of face?
That's the way you look at me whenever we do the ratings.
Okay, so 6 out of 7, something about John, and I've given it 9 out of 10. It was a good episode.
Yes, thank you for that summary. It was very glowing. And on that wonderfully united note, that's all, folks.
If you have the time, we'd appreciate it if you could rate and review the pod. Your thoughts and input mean a lot to us. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Toodles.